Tell us about you. Tell everybody what you do, what you're into, hobbies, business.
Well, I love the name of the podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And that kind of is like a segue because that's how life is, right? It's all about being brave.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in the financial sector for what? It's been like 23 years?
Probably, yeah.
20, yeah. I'm 43. I'm turning 44. I started when I was 20. So there you go. Bang. Yeah. 23 years. And I got into the financial industry because pretty much my parents got ripped off from an insurance company. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything about financial services. I was like going to school. I never liked math. And then all of a sudden, I'm like now doing math. It's like somebody who hates science and now becomes a veterinarian, you know? Right. It wasn't up my alley. Mm-hmm. But I think it was more of a calling for me because of the experience that I saw that my mom and my dad got taken advantage of in that sector. So nobody wants to talk about insurance and investments like it's a sexy thing. It's not. No. By no way, shape of the imagination is someone at 16 years old saying, by golly, when I grow up, I want to do insurance. Like nobody is like that. But what ends up happening is, you end up going on a path because of a purpose and a passion. And it's sort of like instilled because when you have anger or an emotional change within you, that creates a love for something. Mm-hmm. Just like the way you guys are doing right now, because there's something about it that triggered an emotion to make you want to do these podcasts and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the same thing like I did in my career. Like, so here I am, I was a kid, went to high school. I was a really great student, grade 9. I was like on the honor roll, 80s. And then, grade 10, you are who you hang out with. Mm-hmm. So you guys believe in that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I was like hanging out with like certain guys that started to skip school. So my 80s went to 70s, and then grade 11, my 70s went to 60s. By the time I was in grade 12, I was barely scraping by at 50s. I remember the meeting with my principal and like, I think it was like 3 other one of my friends. And the principal was like, listen, you have 2 options. Leave or don't come back. And my friend raised his hand. He goes, sorry, can you repeat those 2 options? And we're like, and we weren't bad kids. We just skipped school.
Yeah.
I remember like I used to go to school probably like Monday to Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. I had long weekends every week, Mm-hmm. And our attendance record was so bad that we tried to get into different high schools. And we applied like to schools that you don't want to go to. And they said no to us,
Yeah.
And so I finally got into another high school. And that high school, Dante Alighieri, because I went to Basil's. Yeah. And Dante Alighieri got me in because the guidance counselor there was married to my old keyboarding teacher. Mm-hmm. And this keyboarding teacher, I'm not going to mention her name, but she used to rub my shoulders. Okay. So I'm like, miss, you got to do me a favor. You got to talk to your husband. I need to get into high school or my dad's going to kill me. Yeah. And so she got me in, talked to her husband. I got in. And again, you are who you hang out with. So I hung out with this one guy, solid dude. And we're still friends to this day, Tony Savelli. And he was smart, popular, did well in school. Well, guess what? I didn't skip school. I did well in school. Mm-hmm. And I got 80s. And then boom, did really, really well.
And you'd say that was just by hanging around with that specific group of people.
Yeah, but then, you still have a little bit of trouble in your first year and all that stuff. I used to do like some crazy stuff. We used to organize walkouts. And I think one time I parked my car in a certain parking spot. And then the teacher kind of parked right in front of me and blocked it. So I was like, I grabbed all these like short grade 10s. And I'm like, hey, come with me. There's like 10 of them. And they came with me, and I think it was like 12 of us. And we lifted the car and we moved it. And then we covered all leaves over it. And I backed out. The next morning, after O Canada, will Daniel Perillo please come to the office, please? I got suspended. But anyway, stuff like that, Yeah. Anyways, so I ended up getting to university. Mm-hmm. And throughout that time frame, when they say young people, they don't work and they're not motivated. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of young, motivated people out there, just like the way you guys started out when you guys were younger.
Yeah.
And so there are people like us. They're just out there. It's just a different generation of motivation, I think it is today, versus everybody else. Everyone's trying to make money on a different mentality versus, like shovel it, working hard mentality. I had like 20 jobs before the age of 20. So
that was like me. I was kind of like that.
You got a lot of jobs?
Yeah. Oh, tons of jobs. I was like Arby's, Sears, Canadian Tire, Subway for like a month, where my mom used to work. I tell people that I've actually been working since I was 6 years old, because when my family came to Canada, they all worked for the same jewelry company. And back in the day when it used to actually pay decently, they used to take the work home. It was like piecework. So you'd get paid, you'd have to do like 2,000 of something, and you'd get paid like $1 per piece or 50 cents per piece or whatever
That's
it was.
piecework.
Piecework. Yeah, that's literally what we were doing. So back when I was 6 years old,
you're doing piecework.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It was like slave labor essentially. But I mean, it would be my mom and my grandparents, because we used to live with them ever since I was about 3 years old, and they would be sitting there at the table. So I'd go home, do my homework, obviously, have dinner, and then we'd all be sitting at the table putting earrings on cards and labeling and assembling things. And then they would get obviously all the money at the end of the week, and then my mom would give me like $5 or whatever. Right. So,
man.
but I mean, I learned how to do things.
Yeah, you
right?
hustled.
I learned how to.
You learned what you didn't like.
Exactly.
You learned what you were good at.
Yeah, I knew that whatever these guys were doing, I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, right? So I made some different choices as I got older. But I feel like I was kind of like in the same boat where everybody kind of goes through this weird rough patch in their life. Because back in I was a really good kid throughout elementary school. Like, we're talking on my report card, like math, 95 to 98. Right.
Jeez.
And the only reason that the teacher would not give me 100 was because the only person who was perfect was God. Right. So she refused up until like the final project or whatever. But then after that, early high school got a little bit rocky. I started hanging out, like you said, with the wrong people, got suspended. Also, the vice principal of my school kind of had it out for me. I don't know why. My mom just kind of assumed it was because I had really long blonde hair.
Oh, I was just going to say that.
And it was easy
your hair
to
was so beautiful.
point me out from a because it was so beautiful. But yeah, it was just, she's like, yeah, you're just picking on him because of his hair, right? Because he looks like a hippie or whatever, right? Which I guess is kind of true. But yeah, he was a jerk, but it is what it is. Yeah. So you said how many jobs did you say you had?
Honestly, I probably had almost 20. I worked at, Holt Renfrew shipping and handling. I hate to say this, but I think I remember working in the shipping and handling department, and we had this shipment. I'm gonna throw them under the bus. Is that okay? A little bit.
Go for it. It's up to you.
And all of a sudden, I see like a shipment coming in from the bay, and we had to take off some tags from the bay and put Holt Renfrew tags on them. And I was like, what?
That's hilarious.
And the price jacks up 1,000%, on some of these pieces.
Yeah.
So I worked at, shipping handling departments. I worked at Fortino's in the fish department. It was brutal. You had to smash fish's heads, and that was like, my dad used to pick me up and he used to put plastic on the passenger side because I used to stink like fish and he'd make fun of me all the way home. I'd take a shower, I'd wake up in the morning, I still smell like salmon, It was just ridiculous. I remember I got fired for eating an olive one time because I would clean up the olive bar. You guys like olives?
I love olives.
What kind of olives do you like?
For me, Kalamata, Calabrese. I'm not a fan of black olives or green olives. It's
black
really
olives
weird.
got a little bit more salt to it, but Kalamata is my favorite. That's my all-time. What about, you like the purple ones or the green ones?
The green ones.
The green ones? Yeah. I like those too.
Okay.
But so they were calling me, because I was cleaning the olive bar. So they said, help me out here. So I popped one. The manager saw me and he's like, looked at me and just wrote something down. I'm like, uh-oh. Next day, fired. But it was a good olive, so I think it was worth it. And then I worked at the garbage man at the C&E. I was picking up. I think the highlight of the day being a garbage man at the C&E was like, you go around the little fair and people would give you like a corn dog. Nice. So that was kind of cool.
Perks.
A little perk like that. I worked in factories, made wood railings, Home Depot, continental shifts, 2 weeks days, afternoons, midnights for like $7 an hour. Different other shipping handling. Worked at Winners, tagging clothes. Washed hair with my dad. My dad is a hairdresser, and he's been a hairdresser since forever. I think 40 plus years minimum. And his clientele is like a ripe 78 and above, right? So it's a ripe,
it's not much work involved because most of them are probably bald by now.
No, actually, they're pretty good because
Really?
they tease it and then they do like the beehive and then they spray half a bottle of hairspray on it, so they kind of hold it.
That's like my grandmother. My grandmother still has like the dome haircut, the nonna haircut.
Exactly.
Right? So
I remember washing hair and tips. You want to sleep in on a Saturday morning. My dad was dragging me 6:30 in the morning to the shop to go wash hair with him. And, could you picture like these, 70, 80-year-old women harder. And as I'm like, washing their hair, harder, quicker, slower, faster. And I'm like, oh, So that was, but I got good tips.
Yeah.
So it was great. I worked at a coffee shop, second cup. I was a certified coffee agent. So I'm pretty dope. I can make like a pretty mean cappuccino, latte, and all that stuff. I did construction. I did private investigation one time. And they hired me for a job. I had to go down to like Chinatown. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Who's going to be out there? He goes, well, there's going to be a lot of protesters of this Chinese newspaper. So I'm out there and I see people like this, a bunch of Chinese people out there like, dot, 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 right? And I'm supposed to go outside every 30 minutes, report what I see and write it down. I walked outside. They started yelling at me. I said, forget it. And I called the guy. I said, I quit. I'm leaving. He goes, why? Because, are you crazy? These guys know Kung Fu. I'm out of here.
Right?
I'm out. Peace. I'm out.
Dealing with this.
I said, for that, my minimum wage? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So I worked at Consumers Tire, changing tires. I did a lot of odds and ends jobs.
Yeah.
I never was really passionate about it.